Have you ever been told that you're too sensitive? Maybe you cry during movies that everyone else laughs through, or a single harsh comment ruins your entire day. Perhaps you feel overwhelmed in crowded places, pick up on the tiniest shift in someone's tone, or take things personally when no offense was meant. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, and more importantly, there's nothing inherently wrong with you. But there is a psychology behind extreme sensitivity, and understanding it can change how you see yourself and how you navigate the world. Today we're diving deep into the minds of people who are too sensitive. We'll explore where this trait comes from, why some people feel everything at full volume while others seem to have an emotional mute button, the hidden strengths and real struggles that come with it, and most importantly, what you can do if you recognize yourself in this description. Let's start with the most common label you've probably heard: highly sensitive person, or HSP. The term was coined in the 1990s by psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron. She didn't invent sensitivity, of course, but she was the first to study it as a distinct personality trait found in about 15 to 20% of the population. That's 1 in every 5 people. So if you're highly sensitive, you're actually in a pretty big minority, but still a minority. According to Aron's research, HSPs process sensory data much more deeply than others. This isn't just about emotions. It's neurological. Their brains literally light up differently on fMRI scans when exposed to stimuli, whether it's bright lights, loud noises, strong smells, or subtle social cues. They notice details others miss. They feel subtle changes in atmosphere. And yes, they experience emotions with greater intensity and duration. But being too sensitive isn't always the same as being an HSP. Some people develop heightened emotional reactivity because of childhood experiences, trauma, attachment styles, or even mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, or borderline personality traits. So today we're going to look at sensitivity from multiple angles: the innate, the learned, and the situational. Let's begin with the biology. Your nervous system has 2 main modes: the sympathetic, fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, rest and digest. For most people, everyday stressors trigger a moderate sympathetic response. They get annoyed, maybe a little anxious, then calm down quickly. For highly sensitive people, the threshold is lower and the reaction is stronger. Even small triggers can flood the system with cortisol and adrenaline. And crucially, it takes them longer to return to baseline. This isn't weakness. It's wiring. Studies show that HSPs have a more active insula, the part of the brain that processes both physical and emotional pain. They also show greater activation in mirror neuron areas, which means they literally feel what others are feeling. When someone near them is upset, it's not just empathy in the abstract. Their brain simulates that pain as if it's happening to them. That's why a sad news story can leave a sensitive person crying for hours, while someone else scrolls past it without a second thought. Now, let's talk about childhood, because this is where things get complicated. Many overly sensitive adults were labeled early on as crybabies, dramatic, or too much. Teachers complained they couldn't handle criticism. Parents got frustrated because they overreacted to everything. Peers called them weird or fragile. But here's the truth: sensitivity isn't created by being babied. In fact, the opposite is often true. Research shows that highly sensitive children who grow up in unsupportive or chaotic environments are at much higher risk of developing anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem in adulthood.
Why?
Because their nervous systems are already on high alert. Add in validation: stop being so sensitive, toughen up, you're overreacting, and you teach them that their natural way of experiencing the world is wrong. Shame gets layered on top of biology. On the flip side, sensitive children raised in calm, validating homes often grow into deeply intuitive, creative, and empathetic adults. The same trait, different soil, produces wildly different outcomes. So if you're someone who feels everything deeply and you had a rough childhood, please hear this: your sensitivity didn't make you weak. It made you survive. You learned to read rooms, predict moods, and walk on eggshells because your nervous system demanded it. That hypervigilance kept you safe when no one else was protecting you. But now, as an adult, that survival strategy might be hurting more than helping. Let's talk about the dark side of being too sensitive. One of the biggest struggles is emotional exhaustion. Because you absorb so much, other people's moods, the energy of a room, even violence in movies, you hit empty faster than others. A single difficult conversation can wipe you out for the rest of the day. Social events feel like marathons. And heaven forbid someone raises their voice, you might need days to recover. Then there's the rumination trap. Sensitive people don't just feel an emotion, they analyze it, replay it, dissect it from every angle. A casual comment like, "You seem tired," can spiral into, "Do they think I'm lazy? Do I look sick? Are they mad at me?" Hours later, you're still turning it over in your mind like a Rubik's Cube that will never solve. Another common pattern: people-pleasing. When you feel others' discomfort so strongly, saying no feels like causing pain. So you say yes when you want to scream no. You over-apologize. You shrink yourself to keep the peace. Over time, this leads to resentment, and eventually, burnout. And let's not ignore rejection sensitivity. For some highly sensitive people, criticism or perceived rejection doesn't just hurt, it feels like the end of the world. This is especially common in those with ADHD or autistic traits, where rejection-sensitive dysphoria, RSD, turns even mild feedback into unbearable shame or rage. So yes, being too sensitive can make life harder. Relationships suffer when you take everything personally. Work suffers when you can't handle constructive criticism. And self-worth suffers when you're constantly told, by others and yourself, that there's something wrong with you. But here's where the story turns. Being too sensitive is not a flaw. It's a trait with both costs and superpowers. Let's talk about the gifts. Highly sensitive people tend to be the conscience of any group. They notice when someone is left out. They sense unfairness before anyone else speaks up. They're the ones who remember your birthday, check in when you're quiet, and cry at weddings, not because they're dramatic, but because they feel the weight of love. Creatively, they're often extraordinary. Think of the artists, musicians, writers, and poets who turn deep feeling into beauty. Van Gogh, Frida Kahlo, Alanis Morissette, Lorde, many openly identify as highly sensitive. Their pain becomes art because they don't filter it out. In relationships, they're deeply loyal and intuitive partners. They notice when you're pretending to be okay. They remember what matters to you. They love with a depth that less sensitive people rarely match. In professional settings, their attention to detail and ability to read people makes them exceptional in fields like therapy, teaching, medicine, design, and leadership, if they learn to manage the overload. The key word is manage. So how do you live well as a highly sensitive person in a world that feels too loud, too fast, and too harsh? First, accept the trait. Stop fighting it. The goal isn't to become less sensitive. That's like trying to become shorter. The goal is to work with your wiring instead of against it. Start with boundaries. This is non-negotiable. Learn to say, "I need some quiet time," without apology. Leave the party when you're overstimulated, even if others are still going strong. Wear headphones in loud environments. Curate your media. Skip the true crime documentaries if they haunt you for weeks. Second, create recovery rituals. Sensitive nervous systems need more downtime. Daily practices like journaling, walking in nature, meditation, or even just lying in a dark room doing nothing can prevent burnout. Think of it like recharging a battery that drains faster than average. Third, reframe criticism. When someone says you're too sensitive, try translating it in your mind, "I experience the world more intensely than you do." That's a fact, not a flaw. You don't need to defend your existence. Fourth, learn emotional regulation tools. Techniques like naming your emotion out loud, "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now," box breathing, for seconds in, for hold, for out, for hold, or grounding exercises, 5 things you see, for you can touch, etc., can help bring the nervous system back online. Fifth, choose your people carefully. Surround yourself with those who respect your depth instead of mocking it. The right people won't call you too much. They'll call you just enough. And finally, perhaps most importantly, practice self-compassion. Talk to yourself the way you'd talk to a sensitive child who's hurting. Because in many ways, that's who you're still protecting. The world needs sensitive people. We need the ones who cry at injustice, who notice suffering, who refuse to look away from pain, ours or anyone else's. Yes, it hurts more. Yes, it's exhausting. But it also means you're awake in a world that desperately needs more people who haven't numbed themselves to everything that matters. So if you're someone who feels too much, hear this. You are not broken. You are not dramatic. You are not too sensitive. You are exactly sensitive enough for the life you were meant to live. And one day, you'll look back and realize that what felt like a curse was actually your greatest strength in disguise. Thank you for feeling with me today.